Hello everyone, I'm Mr. Graveveil. Before we start, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any videos like this. Now let's begin. You know it's going to be a good night when your shift starts with your coworker calling in sick 5 minutes before clock in. Sure, Kareen, sick, right. I'm sure tequila counts as a virus now. So there I was, stuck on a last-minute overnight shift at the 24-hour pharmacy, because why not? My boss didn't pick up the phone, the regional manager was traveling, and I hadn't even had dinner. That's what I get for being reliable, I guess. Gold star for me. The store was quiet, as in abandoned after a zombie outbreak, kind of quiet. The automatic lights took 3 tries to flicker on, and the air conditioning made that charming industrial rattling sound like it was chewing gravel. Cozy. I logged into the POS system and guess what? The register froze. Just sat there staring at me like it was reconsidering life. I hit CTRL plus Alt plus Del like a pro, and the screen blinked off, then back on with a lovely message. System rebooting for updates. Because obviously, midnight is the best time for that. As I waited for the system to sort its existential crisis, I did the usual, walked the aisles, straightened shelves, checked inventory. Everything was fine. Boring, even, until the door chime rang. Now normally, that means someone walked in. That's the whole point of a motion sensor. Except the front doors were shut. No one outside, not even a raccoon. I waited, listened, nothing. So I chalked it up to the wind, or maybe the ghosts of customers who never used their reward points. But then the register beeped on its own. A transaction window opened, like it was about to process a purchase. No item scanned, no one at the counter. Just a ghost sale. Delightful. I muttered, sure. Totally normal. And I laughed because what else do you do when your workplace decides to go poltergeist-light? I looked around again, half expecting to see someone crouched behind the blood pressure machine, waiting to jump out yelling, "Gotcha!" But nope, just me and the echo of fluorescent lights. So I did what any responsible sleep-deprived adult would do. I ignored it. I shut the register, rebooted again, and pretended like I was still in control. Because nothing says mentally stable like whispering, "It's fine. I'm fine. We're all fine," to a blinking cash register at 1:14 a.m. After the charming start to my shift, I decided to stick close to the counter, in case the sentient cash register decided to come alive and start scanning thin air again. I even gave it a name, Casper, because apparently I now work with ghosts. Around 2:07 a.m., the doors slid open again. This time I saw them move. No mistaking it. The soft whoosh of the sensor triggering, the metallic hiss of the sliding glass, and nothing. Absolutely no one there. Not a soul. I even stepped outside like a genius, half expecting to be mugged by the invisible man. Spoiler, no one was outside. Just the cold night, the hum of a flickering streetlight, and the nagging feeling that I was officially losing my mind. I went back in, doors shutting behind me with that soft click that suddenly sounded way too final. I stood there, watching them, daring them to open again. They didn't, like they were mocking me. I turned around and headed to aisle 3. The one with the band-aids and sadness, when I heard something behind me. Light footsteps. Not quick, not loud, just soft enough to make you wonder if you heard anything at all. I spun around, half laughing. Oh great. Now I'm hearing things. Classic horror movie breakdown. All that's missing is the dramatic violin score. Nothing. Aisle empty. Again. That's when I remembered the security monitors in the back office. Maybe, just maybe, the cameras caught something. And honestly, if it was a raccoon doing parkour on the roof, I'd take it. Any explanation was welcome. I went into the office, sat in front of the dusty screens, and rewound the footage. Nothing on camera 1, nothing on 2. And then on camera 4 something moved. I paused. There was a brief flicker near the entrance. like a smudge passing by the frame. I zoomed in, heart pounding, and it was gone, totally gone. So that's fun, I muttered. Invisible shoppers, love it. I leaned back in the chair, hands behind my head like I wasn't mildly freaking out. Maybe it was a glitch. Maybe I was tired. Or maybe, just maybe, some genius prankster was screwing with me using some kind of remote-controlled, I don't know, drone? Cloaking device? Right, because that's more logical than doors open for no reason. I sat there for a while, pretending I wasn't panicking, then got up to do another walkthrough. I wasn't going to be that idiot who ends up in news headline, local pharmacist found crying in stockroom. Nope, not tonight. It was around 3 a.m., that magical time when reality starts melting and your brain officially declares bankruptcy. I'd walked the aisles twice, checked the back room, and given myself a motivational speech in the mirror by the vitamin section. Spoiler, it didn't work. I was behind the counter again, scrolling through the register logs, when I saw something weird. A transaction had gone through, like fully processed. Time stamped at 2:38 a.m., right in the middle of my imaginary customer Olympics. But here's the fun part. It was for a controlled medication, the kind we have under lock and key. So naturally, I did the most logical thing. Stared at the screen like it had personally betrayed me. I clicked into the details. Item: alprazolam. Quantity: 1. Sold by me, cool, super cool, except I hadn't sold anything to anyone, especially not something that, requires an ID and human interaction. I got up and went straight to the storage drawer, where we keep the locked medications. The drawer was sealed, just like I left it, but the label on the alprazolam bin? Off-center, shifted just slightly. Not dramatic, not obvious, but different. I opened the drawer with my key, half hoping to find everything in perfect order. I counted the units, 1 missing. Perfect, absolutely perfect. A drug walked itself out of the drawer. Maybe it had legs. Maybe it was stressed and needed to calm down. That's when I decided sarcasm wasn't enough. I needed actual answers. So I checked the audit logs. Those handy little files that record every key access. According to the system, the drawer had been opened at 2:38 a.m. Okay, I muttered. So either I'm sleepwalking with admin privileges, or someone else has a key. Fun thought. I rechecked the cameras. Nothing. Just me, walking around like a paranoid mall cop. No one at the counter. No one at the drawer. Which meant one of two things. Either the cameras were missing something, or I was. I stood there in the back room, staring at the monitor like it owed me an explanation, trying to ignore the cold creeping up my spine. That drawer was opened. That pill was taken. And someone not me, logged it under my name. I laughed. Because at that point, what else do you do? I'm gonna get fired by a ghost, I said out loud. That's how this ends. At this point, I was no longer just annoyed or tired. I was in that special place where every noise feels like it has personal beef with you. The hum of the fridge? Hostile. The beep of the motion sensor? Passive-aggressive. My own footsteps? Suspiciously loud, like even my shoes were judging me. Back in the office, I started scanning every camera feed like I was auditioning for a low-budget crime show. Zooming, rewinding, pausing, over and over. And then something happened. Camera 6, the one facing the cold medicine aisle, flickered. Once, twice. Then it glitched. Static crawling across the screen like ants at a picnic. Fun. I rewound 5 minutes, and there it was. A frame, a single frame. Someone or something, passing between aisles. No face, no shape. Just a human-sized blur. One frame, gone the next. Now I'm not saying I screamed. I'm just saying I made a noise that could be mistaken for a dying raccoon. I paused the screen again and just stared. I thought about calling someone. But who? The police? Hi, yes. I'd like to report a blurry smudge. That'd go over great. So instead, I pulled up the main system, the actual computer that logs access and updates. And guess what? It was active, like right now. Someone was remotely in the system, poking around. Files opened and closed in real time. One even labeled staff_report_overnight.docx. Oh, okay. So not only am I being gaslit by my own store, but someone out there is writing a freaking report on me while I lose my mind in real time. Cute. I tried to disconnect the network. It wouldn't let me. The cursor literally moved on its own, closing the command window like, nope, not today, loser. I backed away from the desk, hands raised like I was negotiating with a digital poltergeist. Then I heard it, a soft click, like a door latch being tested. Not fully opened, just touched. I froze. There are exactly 3 doors in that store. Front entrance, locked, the office, where I was, and the supply closet. Guess which one the sound came from? Yeah, the supply closet, because of course it did. I grabbed the flashlight, the one that barely worked, and walked out into the main store like I was in some kind of B-grade horror flick. My hand was shaking so hard the beam looked like a strobe light. I got to the closet door, stared at it. It looked normal, unassuming, completely not suspicious, which of course made it way more suspicious. I pressed my ear to the door, nothing, then soft shuffle, like someone shifting their weight. Perfect, absolutely perfect. I opened the supply closet without expecting much, ready to find a mop and some toilet paper. That's exactly what I saw, plus one detail. Behind the bucket, there was a small brown paper bag. My name was written on it in pen. Inside, a blister pack of alprazolam, the same one that had mysteriously gone missing, and a folded note. 2 words, handwritten, "You're next." I wasn't sure what bothered me more, the threat itself or the fact someone used the same standard bag we give everyone. Could have at least been creative. There were no cameras pointing at the closet. Nothing that showed how the bag got there. No proof, no explanation. But someone had been in that room. Someone accessed the locked drawer. Someone left a message. I returned to the office and stared at the monitors. One was stuck on static. The others showed a quiet, empty store. The computer cursor blinked, paused over a file still open, my name in the title. I could have reported it, called someone, shown the glitchy footage, the bag, the note. But who would believe me? A ghost transaction, a missing pill that reappeared, a vague threat on a common pharmacy bag. On paper, it was just another night shift. When the sun began to rise, I shut the system down, pocketed the keys, and waited. My coworker arrived a little after 5, already complaining about the cold. I handed everything over, smiled, said it was all fine. Not because I believed it, but because it was easier. I never went back. I didn't tell anyone what happened. And if someone eventually noticed a returned pill in the closet, no one said a word. Since then, every time I walk past a pharmacy, I glance at the storage room, not out of fear, out of habit. Some things you understand immediately. Others you just learn to live with. I've worked the night shift at a 24-hour convenience store off a quiet interstate for a little over a year. Nothing fancy. Just aisles of chips, energy drinks, and that ever-present hum of fluorescent lights. Most nights blend together, a couple of late-night truckers, someone stumbling and looking for cigarettes, a random guy talking to himself by the coffee machine. You learn to stop asking questions. The weird thing is, it's never loud. Even when customers come in, there's a weight to the silence. Like everything is waiting for something else to happen. The hours between midnight and 2 a.m. are slow, sure. But it's after 3 that the air feels different, still dense. Sometimes I catch myself holding my breath, and I don't even know why. There's a large wall clock behind the register. Between 3 o'clock and 4 a.m., it feels like the seconds stretch longer than they should. I'll look away, count to 30, look back, and the minute hand hasn't moved. I've checked my phone too. Same thing. Time doesn't stop, but it doesn't behave normally either. I used to think it was just the fatigue playing tricks on me. But now I'm not so sure. Because every night, right around 3:17 a.m., something changes. I can't prove it yet, but it's there. Around 3 a.m., the store turns into a vacuum. No traffic outside. No customers. Just the sound of the refrigerator buzzing and the soft click of the clock on the wall. I usually kill time by restocking shelves or wiping down the counters. But one night, I had this feeling like I shouldn't turn my back to the windows. I kept glancing up. The parking lot was empty, but I still felt watched. That night, I noticed something new. One of the outdoor trash bins had been moved. Normally, they're bolted down near the gas pumps. But now, it was closer to the store entrance. I stepped outside, thinking maybe someone had hit it with their car. But there were no tire marks, no sign of anything. As I walked back in, I caught a glimpse of something in the reflection of the glass door, a shadow near the side of the building. When I turned, there was nothing there. I told myself it was nothing, just a bird maybe. But I started locking the doors after 3 o'clock, even though I wasn't supposed to. I figured I'd unlock them if a customer showed up. That was the first night I started checking behind the dumpster before my shift ended. I didn't find anyone. But the feeling? It got worse. It was the third night in a row that I'd locked the doors after 3 a.m. The rule was simple. Stay open 24/7. But I was alone, and no one showed up during that hour anyway. At 3:21 a.m., I looked up from the register and saw a shape. Someone standing far back in the lot, just outside the range of the overhead lights. They weren't moving, just facing the store. I stared for a while, waiting for them to walk closer, maybe come to the door. But they didn't. No motion. No sound. No car nearby. I watched the figure for a full 5 minutes. I even waved. Nothing. They just stood there, blurred slightly by the grime on the glass, like they'd been there before I even noticed. I didn't go outside. I kept my hand under the counter, fingers touching the emergency button we were told never to use unless it was life or death. I didn't press it. I didn't want to explain anything. Eventually, I turned away to check the monitor. When I looked back out, gone. No footsteps. No vehicle. Just the same empty lot. That was the first time I felt real fear. Not just unease. Not paranoia. Actual fear. The next morning, I checked the security footage. I needed to know if that figure was real, or just something my brain invented out of boredom and exhaustion. I fast-forwarded to around 3:20 a.m. The cameras cover everything: the register, the front door, the parking lot. But as I scrubbed through the timeline, I noticed a chunk of footage missing. From 3:13 to 3:48 a.m., the file was corrupted. Just static. No image, no audio. That had never happened before, not once in a full year working there. I tried other nights, same thing. Every night that I'd felt that unease, that pressure in the air, those minutes were gone. I asked my manager casually, pretending I needed help with the cameras. He barely looked at the screen and said, "Yeah, that system's always glitching late at night." But the cameras weren't just glitching, they were blacking out during the exact same window. I started saving the footage before the system could overwrite it, but even saved files were useless. Either blank or warped, as if the lens had been underwater. Now I wasn't just scared. I felt removed. Like whatever was happening wasn't just outside. It was somehow slipping into the recordings, into my shift, into the story I wouldn't be able to prove. That night, I didn't even pretend to follow protocol. Doors locked. Lights dimmed. My chair pulled slightly back so I could see the windows without moving. At 3:17 a.m., like clockwork, the same figure appeared, same spot, standing near the edge of the light. But this time, something was different. It was facing me. Before, I could never be sure. Maybe it had its back turned, maybe it was looking at the ground. But now I could feel it. The stare, direct, solid. Even through glass and darkness, I felt pinned in place. I didn't blink, I didn't move. The seconds dragged, stretching into long silences. I kept thinking, if it walks toward the door, I'm going to lose it. But it didn't move. It just stood there, like it knew that doing nothing was worse. I tried to raise my phone to take a photo, but my hand wouldn't cooperate. It trembled so hard I nearly dropped the phone, and when I looked back up, it was gone. This time I didn't check the footage. I already knew what I'd find. I stayed until sunrise, frozen in that chair. And when the sun finally hit the edge of the parking lot, I realized I'd been holding my breath for nearly 2 hours. The figure didn't show up that night. For a while, I thought maybe it was over. I kept the doors locked after 3 o'clock just in case. But something felt different, not safer. Just quieter in a way that made me more alert. Like the store was holding its breath. I walked the aisles with the key in my hand. I checked the cooler, the bathroom, the back room. Everything was where it should be. But halfway through my walk, I noticed the front door lock was turned the wrong way. I knew I had locked it. I locked it again, told myself I'd imagined it, that I had just forgotten. But the thought didn't sit right. The rest of the shift was tense. Every sound made me look over my shoulder. At one point, I thought I heard the soft clink of a bottle on the floor behind the counter. But when I checked, nothing was there. I kept replaying that lock in my head. I had felt the resistance when I turned it earlier. I remembered the click. And now, all I could think was, if it wasn't outside tonight, maybe it came in. I wasn't going to work that night. I told myself I was done. But when I checked the schedule, no one had taken my shift. I didn't want to be the kind of person who quits without warning. So I went in, one last time. This time I brought someone with me, an old friend who used to do security. He didn't ask many questions, just showed up with a coffee and sat behind the counter with me. For the first 2 hours, it was quiet. We talked a little, but mostly watched the front of the store. He said he didn't see anything strange. At 3:16, I noticed he'd stopped talking. He was staring at the window, his eyes fixed. I asked if he saw something. He didn't answer. When I looked, I saw nothing. Just black glass reflecting the inside of the store. He stood up slowly, then turned to me and said, "I don't think you should come back here." And then he left. Didn't wait. Didn't explain. I didn't finish the shift. I locked up and left everything behind. Didn't even turn off the lights. I called in the next day and told them I quit. They didn't ask why. The first night off, I slept with the lights on. I kept telling myself it was over. I didn't work there anymore. But around 3:20 a.m., I woke up. No noise, no nightmare. Just opened my eyes, heart racing, without knowing why. I went to the window and looked out at the street. Empty. Silent. But my porch light was flickering. I waited. Watched it pulse on, off, on again. Maybe it was just old wiring. Maybe I was still on edge. But the next night, it happened again. Same time, same pulsing light. The third night I unscrewed the bulb, left it dark. At 3:17, I woke up again. No light this time. But there was a shape in the window glass. Just a blur. A trick of shadow. But I didn't move, didn't check. I don't sleep near windows anymore. I'd been driving for nearly 10 hours when I saw the neon sign flicker through the fog. Pine Hollow Motel, vacancy. It wasn't my first choice, but at 2:18 a.m., options are limited, and exhaustion doesn't care about aesthetics. The parking lot was empty, except for one dusty pickup truck. I parked under the dim light near the office and stepped into the stale-smelling lobby. The man behind the counter looked half asleep, early 50s, graying, with eyes that didn't quite meet mine. "Room for one?" I asked. He nodded, slid a form across the counter without a word. The key was metal. Actual metal, with a giant plastic tag labeled Room 7. No ID check, no card swipe. Just cash and silence. The hallway was narrow, carpet worn thin. My room was at the far end, right beside the emergency exit. Inside, the air smelled of bleach and something faintly metallic. The kind of smell that never really goes away. I locked the door, clicked the deadbolt, and pulled the heavy curtains tight. The window faced the parking lot, but I wasn't interested in the view. After a quick shower, I collapsed onto the stiff mattress, not even bothering to unpack. The TV muttered something unintelligible as I drifted off. For the first time all day, I wasn't moving. The motel creaked a bit with the wind outside. Pipes clicked once, maybe twice. But the silence that followed was so complete. It almost sounded intentional. That's the part that stuck with me. It didn't sound like a place where people were sleeping. It sounded like a place where someone was listening. I don't know what woke me. There was no sound, no sudden movement. Just that sharp, primal feeling, like someone standing too close behind you. The room was pitch black, except for the faint orange glow leaking in through the edges of the curtains. I lay still for a moment, heart already thudding, listening. The TV was off now. I didn't remember turning it off, then I saw it. Just a silhouette, barely outlined through the fabric. A figure, motionless, tall, right outside my window. I froze. It wasn't the vague shadow of a tree or a passing car. It was centered, upright, human. He was facing in toward me, not moving, not pacing, just watching. I stayed in bed, barely breathing, afraid that even a shift in the blanket would let him know I was awake. My eyes scanned the room for my phone, but it was across the nightstand, too far to reach without sitting up. Eventually, I couldn't take it. I rose slowly, staying low, and inched toward the curtain. I held my breath, fingers trembling as I reached to pull it back. But when I did, he was gone. No footsteps. No fading echo of movement. Just an empty parking lot and the same flickering neon. Still, I knew what I saw. There were no fresh tire tracks. No signs of anyone walking away. And that orange glow? It suddenly felt more like a spotlight. Like someone wanted me to see him just long enough to know he was there. I didn't sleep after that. I sat upright in bed, staring at the window like he might return at any second. Eventually, I convinced myself it was a hallucination, the product of exhaustion and stress. But that lie didn't last long. At 3:41 a.m., I heard the sound. A soft, almost apologetic click, the kind a doorknob makes when someone tries to turn it without fully committing. My blood ran cold. I turned slowly toward the door. Another faint sound. Not quite a knock, more like pressure, a test. Like fingers pressing gently against the frame. I crept toward it, grabbing the room's ice bucket. A useless weapon, but it made me feel less helpless. I checked the peephole. Nothing. I waited. Held my breath. Then lunged and yanked the door open. Empty hallway. Silence. But when I looked down, there were smudges on the knob. Fresh fingerprints. Long, thin, damp. Like whoever touched it had just come in from the cold. I slammed the door shut and threw the deadbolt. Even dragged the small desk in front of it. I called the front desk. The same man answered. "There's someone outside my room," I said, trying to sound calm. Long pause. "Nobody's checked in tonight. Just you." "What about cameras?" "We don't have those anymore." I didn't know what unsettled me more, the man outside my door or the one answering the phone. By sunrise, my nerves were shredded. I hadn't slept, hadn't blinked for more than a second. When the sky began to turn gray, I threw on my clothes and went straight to the front desk. The man from the night shift was still there. Same shirt, same vacant stare. "I need to see the security footage," I said. He didn't argue. Just stood up, grabbed a ring of keys, and led me into a cramped back office. Dust on every surface. A monitor flickered in the corner, attached to a VHS recorder of all things. Analog, no timestamps. He rewound the tape. At 2:03 a.m., I appeared on screen. Parking, grabbing my bag, walking into the lobby. Normal. Then, 2:18, my room's window. A tall figure approached slowly from the far end of the lot. He stopped a few feet from the glass. Just stood there, not shifting, not speaking. Head tilted ever so slightly to the side. I watched him stare at the curtains for 26 minutes straight. Then, suddenly, a skip in the footage. When it returned, the man was gone. I asked to rewind it again. This time, I paid closer attention. Right before the footage cut out, he moved. But not away. He stepped forward, toward the window, and leaned in close just before the screen scrambled. I swallowed hard. Was the window locked? The clerk finally looked me in the eye. Only you would know that. That's when I realized the man in the footage never touched the door, but he somehow got in. I didn't bother checking out. I tossed my things into the car, not caring if I left behind a sock or half my charger. The motel felt wrong now, like I'd stayed too long in a place that wasn't meant for visitors. The front desk clerk didn't say goodbye. Just watched as I hauled my bag through the parking lot. His eyes followed me a little too long, like he was waiting for something else to happen. I got in, started the engine, and felt the relief hit me like fresh air. But then I looked in the rearview mirror. Room 7, my window. The curtains had parted, just slightly. And someone was standing there, same height, same tilt of the head, same stillness, staring at me as I pulled away. I drove faster than I should have down that empty stretch of road, the motel shrinking in the distance behind me. I didn't stop until daylight fully broke. Later, when I calmed down enough to think clearly, I called the motel. No one answered. I tried again 2 days later. Disconnected. A week after that, I checked the address online. Nothing came up. No listing, no photos, no reviews. Like the place had never existed. But I remember that room. I remember the smell, the sound, and most of all, I remember that face in the window. Watching, waiting, not for me anymore, but maybe for whoever checks into room 7 next. Night shifts don't scare me. They exhaust me, bore me, numb me, but they don't scare me. I'd been working the 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. shift at a 24-hour pharmacy just outside of town for months. Nothing exciting ever happened. The occasional drunk customer, a few late-night regulars, and long stretches of silence. Just the steady buzz of fluorescent lights and the low hum of the coolers. That night felt no different. It was cold outside, the kind of dry cold that makes the glass doors fog up with every breath. I kept the radio on low behind the counter, mostly to break the silence. At exactly 2:03 a.m., the doors slid open with a soft hiss. She walked in, alone, no bag, no phone. Just a woman in a long dark coat, moving slowly like she had all the time in the world. Her hair hung wet over her shoulders. She didn't look at me. Didn't even glance at the security mirrors. Just walked straight past, disappearing down the aisles. There was nothing strange at first. We get late-night browsers sometimes. People who just need to feel like the world isn't sleeping without them. I went back to check in stock behind the counter. But something about the way she moved stuck with me. Too quiet. Too deliberate. Like she already knew exactly where everything was. And for some reason, that made me nervous. I kept glancing at the monitor above the counter. 4 grainy camera feeds. She was in aisle 3, the one with vitamins and cold medicine. She hadn't moved for nearly 5 minutes. Just standing there, back to the camera, staring at the shelves. That's when the hairs on my neck stood up. It wasn't the stillness. It was the way she was angled. Not quite centered. Her head tilted just slightly. as if listening for something behind the wall. And her arms, they hung too straight, like she was trying not to be noticed. I decided to check. I stepped out from behind the counter and walked toward aisle 3, trying not to make a sound. But when I turned the corner, it was empty. No footsteps, no sound of her walking away. Just shelves of medicine and the soft buzz of lights overhead. I even checked the other aisles, all of them. Nothing. I returned to the counter, feeling that tight pull in my chest. Maybe she left and I missed it. Maybe she was hiding. I looked at the doors. The motion sensor never triggered. They hadn't opened since she arrived. Then I saw her again. On the screen. Aisle 7 this time. Cosmetics. Standing in the exact same posture. Back straight, head tilted. Staring at nothing. Except now, her coat was gone. Chapter 3. The register that didn't beep. I stayed behind the counter this time. Watched her silently on the monitor as she moved from aisle 7 to 5. Then to 4. Always alone. Always slow. Like she was floating just slightly off the ground. At 3:01 a.m., she appeared at the end of the main aisle, finally heading toward me. She approached the register without saying a word. Her coat was back on. In her hands, a small bottle of something, maybe shampoo or hand soap. She placed it gently on the counter and stared at me. I picked up the item and tried to scan it. Nothing. I waved it again. The scanner didn't react. I looked at the screen, completely frozen. No error message, no beep. Just stuck. I glanced at her. She hadn't blinked. Just watched me with that blank expression. Until her lips started to curve. A smile, not warm, not polite, just wide. Too wide. I stepped back instinctively. The scanner beeped once, then shut off completely. Lights dimmed for a moment. Then, silence. The bottle was gone. I hadn't moved it. I looked around, nothing on the floor, nothing in her hands. And then, she wasn't there. No footsteps, no sound, no motion on the door sensor. Just gone. The front doors never opened. I waited until dawn. Customers trickled in just after 5, their presence a strange kind of comfort. As soon as I could, I pulled the security footage from the office computer. I needed to understand what I'd seen, or thought I'd seen. The woman entered the store at 2:03 a.m., just as I remembered. She walked in slow, coat trailing behind her. The camera by the door caught it clearly. But what followed didn't make sense. She appeared in aisle 3, then aisle 7, then 5, faster than she could have walked. In one frame, she was visible in 2 aisles at the same time, both standing still. Both facing away from the camera. I rewound and played it again. Then something else. When she stood at the register, the footage lagged. The screen warped. Her face, blurred. Not distorted like a glitch, more like it had been erased. And after she vanished, I scanned every frame for her exit. She never left. Not once did the doors open after she arrived. But the final footage, from the camera above the counter, chilled me to the bone. As I stood there, watching the screen, leaning into the monitor, I wasn't alone. In the lower left corner of the frame, just barely in focus, she was behind the counter. Standing right behind me, smiling. I've worked the night shift at this convenience store for almost a year now. Most nights pass slow and uneventful. The kind of silence that settles in after midnight feels different, heavier, like the world is holding its breath. That night was cold, even for late fall. The parking lot lights buzzed softly, casting long pale shadows across the asphalt. Inside, the hum of the fridges and the occasional beep from the register were the only sounds keeping me company. I'd fallen into a rhythm. Sweep the floor, restock the chips, check the dates on the milk, repeat. Around 1 a.m., I poured myself a stale cup of coffee and leaned against the counter, watching the monitor cycle through the 4 security cameras. Empty aisles, empty lot, just me. The store always smelled faintly of cleaning spray and microwaved burritos. The kind of place that never really sleeps, even if no one's buying. I stared at the glass front of the store. Beyond it, the dark street and the orange glow of street lamps. Not a single car passed. It wasn't fear I felt. Not yet. Just that subtle awareness that comes when everything is too quiet, too still. Like the silence was watching me back. It was 2:08 a.m. when I noticed him. He was standing just beyond the glass doors, still as a photograph. A tall man in a heavy coat, his face pale under the buzzing lights. He wasn't moving. Not trying to come in. Just staring. At first, I assumed he was a late-night smoker or someone waiting for a ride. But 5 minutes passed, then 10. He hadn't shifted once. Not a twitch, not a blink. I cleared my throat and tried not to stare back. But the way he stood, directly facing me, hands at his sides, made it impossible to ignore. There was no curiosity in his eyes, no recognition. Just a hollow, fixed gaze that felt like it was aimed at my ribs, not my face. I walked around the counter slowly, trying to look casual. When I reached the doors, I pretended to adjust the newspaper rack, stealing a glance at him. That close, I realized something odd. His coat looked dusty, like it hadn't been worn indoors in weeks. And his shoes, they were soaked. I opened the door slightly. "You okay out here?" I asked. No response, no movement. Just when I was about to step back inside, he turned. Not toward a car or the road, just away, drifting back into the dark edges of the parking lot. He didn't look lost. He looked like he knew exactly where he was going. But where that was, I couldn't tell. I tried to shake it off. People act strange at night. I've seen it before. But something about him, the way he moved, the way he watched, it clung to me. Around 2:30 a.m., I realized I hadn't restocked the bottled water fridge. It meant a quick trip to the back room, just for a few minutes. I hesitated. The store was empty, of course. Still, I left the door open behind me. The storage area was quiet, cold. Rows of metal shelves and stacked boxes, everything cast in harsh fluorescent light. I loaded a case of water onto a cart and rolled it back toward the front. That's when I noticed it. One of the candy displays had been shifted, just slightly. A few Snickers bars on the floor, like they'd been knocked off or dropped. I hadn't left it like that. I was sure. I glanced at the counter. The coffee cup I'd left was now empty, turned upside down. My skin prickled. I stepped behind the register and pulled up the security footage. Nothing. Then I noticed it. Between 2:32 and 2:34 a.m., the front camera glitched. A flicker, a brief static blur. 2 full minutes of scrambled feed. And when it came back, the man was gone. But the glass door showed a faint smudge, like a handprint. From the inside. By 3:45 a.m., I was counting the seconds. My shift would end at 6, but something in me was done already. I kept checking the cameras, pacing between the aisles, pretending to tidy shelves I'd already cleaned twice. I tried to convince myself I'd imagined it. The handprint, the candy display. Maybe I bumped it earlier. Maybe the glitch was just bad Wi-Fi. I almost believed it until I looked up. He was there again, pressed against the glass just inches from the door. His face, so close it fogged the window with every breath. His eyes were open wide, unblinking, and fixed directly on mine. I froze. He didn't knock, didn't move, just watched. I didn't dare approach this time. I backed away slowly, grabbed my phone with shaking hands, and opened the camera app to zoom in. He was smiling. A subtle, wrong smile, like someone mimicking what a smile should look like. Then, without warning, he turned and vanished into the dark once more. No footsteps, no car engine, just gone. At dawn, when the next clerk arrived, I pulled the footage again. I needed proof. Frame by frame, I watched the loop. Most of it showed nothing. Then for a few seconds, he was there, but not outside. The camera in aisle 3, During the same time the front feed glitched, showed a shadow, a tall figure, behind the snack rack. I never saw his face in that frame, but I know it was him. If you've ever gone through something similar, or know someone who has, leave a comment below. Sometimes, just telling it is already a way to protect yourself. And if this video made you think twice before letting your guard down, then it was already worth it. And if you want to keep hearing stories that might help keep you alive, subscribe. The next story could be yours.